Hello, this is Jacob. Nick isn't here today. She's gone somewhere. I can't remember where. I don't know if she told you.
Somewhere in the country still.
She's somewhere in the country. I also recently wasn't here. I was outside of the country. I was in Europe. So, yeah, I'm making this up as I go along. There's nobody here. So I'm just basically gonna go through some movies I like and give some really shallow, quick reviews on them, just so people can maybe transcribe what I'm saying, print it out, put it up on your wall. That's a good idea. First things first, a little while ago, Nick and I were trying to figure out what movie should we go see, what movie should we go review. And I was like, all right, there's all these movies out at the moment. We can see any one of them you like. But there is Ready Player One. And I don't know about you, Nick, but I think that movie looks like a huge steaming pile of shit. And I do not want to see that movie under any circumstances whatsoever. So obviously that's the movie we saw because we were going to review it. And I have to tell you, I hated every minute of it. I could not wait to leave the cinema. It was the biggest waste of my time and money I've ever seen. That movie is just incredibly shallow, and there was literally no point to it. There's nothing unique about it. There's nothing original. There is nothing that just makes me think, oh yeah, this was definitely worth seeing. It was just constant pop culture references, and that was it. There was nothing. It didn't do anything with them. I'm literally at a loss for words here because this movie, it's really is scraping the bottom of the barrel to the depths of hell. That's how deep this barrel of shit goes, and it's scraping it because it's just so terrible. And I can't believe I'm being serious. It literally drives me insane here. I think I'm in the minority here. Everyone I seem to talk to seems to love that movie. When I left the cinema, I couldn't help but hear lots of people talk about how awesome that movie was. And I just couldn't understand it. Am I the only one here who notices that? You know, it's a shit movie. It's amazing that so many people put so much time and energy and effort into something that was so empty and so lifeless. And also, what was with the Shining thing? Why did Steven Spielberg think that would be an okay thing to do? If Stanley Kubrick could see that today, I bet you he'd be rolling in his grave saying, "What the fuck are you doing to my movie?" Stephen King would probably be like, "Yeah, nah, I don't give a shit. I hated that movie." But Stanley Kubrick would be like, "What are you doing? What are you doing, Steven Spielberg? I gave you AI, and this is how you repay me by desecrating The Shining." Seriously. So basically, don't see the movie, and also don't read the book. I haven't read the book, but I have read excerpts of it, and the book looks like shit as well. It's just that these days there seems to be a lot of pop culture out there that doesn't seem to do anything else but just sort of reference pop culture with no real reason or rhyme to it, with no purpose. Just say, "Hey, remember this? Hey, remember that? Oh, hey, look, it's that thing. You remember that? Oh, you don't remember that? Well, maybe you remember this other thing. Oh, look, it's King Kong. And oh, hey, look, it's Master Chief. And look, it's the guy from World of Warcraft. Oh, it's the DeLorean from Back to the Future." Seriously, why are you doing all these references? If I went around doing all those references, I'd probably get kicked in the head because it's annoying as fuck and there's no point to it. Seriously, just fuck that movie so much. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. It is undoubtedly one of the worst movies I've seen this year. I just hate it. And you know what else annoys me so much as well? That movie, it took so long to make, in post-production, because of all the shitty special effects they put so much time and effort into. Steven Spielberg went off, made another movie during that period, and then was nominated for several Oscars, which also makes me very angry as well for some reason. Yeah, I actually think he's kind of shit and a bit overrated. But at the same time, he definitely has made some good movies, like Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan, and he produced Band of Brothers. So now I'm just going through all the Steven Spielberg movies I can remember. So I just want to say one last thing about Ready Player One. So I understand that it is definitely what you would call the summer blockbuster. And, summer blockbusters are big, dumb, unoriginal things. However, the difference between dumb blockbusters and Ready Player One is that at least the dumb blockbusters had an original idea to begin with. Like, yeah, there's 8 Fast and Furious movies, but the thing is, the Fast and Furious movies, which was a remake, I think, of an old 50s movie, thing is that originally was someone's idea. Somebody thought of that. They created that by themselves. They didn't have to rely on other pop culture references to make that piece of culture. They just did it themselves. Sure, there's a bunch of Transformers movies, but they used to be a cartoon, and that used to be someone's, idea. Someone thought of, hey, let's make Transformers for kids. That's an original idea. It's just a continuation of that idea. Look at the Meg. The Meg looks like shit, and it's sort of a ripoff of Jaws, but at the same time, somebody wrote a book called The Meg, and then they rewrote it because it wasn't good enough. And then, it was pitched as a movie, and they've been trying to make it for 20 years. It's still, somebody tried to think of it. Whereas to me, Ready Player One, both the book and the movie, literally looks like some guy just being like, oh, I'm going to pitch them idea, and then the pitching date comes and they haven't thought of anything, and then they just literally looked at their shelf full of original 80s toys in their original plastic or whatever, and was just like, hey, what if I just smash them all together and see if that makes a movie? And that's what it is, just totally unoriginal, totally void of any meaning or anything like that. So on to other things. I recently watched Silence by Martin Scorsese, which to me is an incredibly interesting choice for his next feature film after The Wolf of Wall Street, because The Wolf of Wall Street is the complete opposite of Silence. If you do not know what Silence is, Silence stars Andrew Garfield, and basically it's about these 2 Portuguese Jesuit priests. They go to Japan to spread the word of Jesus and figure out what happened to their old mentor, played by Liam Neeson. And so it's a very thoughtful movie. It's also a very religious movie. And, I have nothing really against religion, but I'm not a religious person myself. So to watch a movie like this, it's very interesting to me. But yeah, I actually quite enjoyed it. It was very interesting. I really liked the cinematography. I thought it was gorgeous. And, the performances were great. I don't know, if you had a really religious family or something, and you were like, oh, I got to plan a double feature for these religious people. Probably say Hacksaw Ridge and Silence, back-to-back double feature. Make for a great viewing. Both very religious, both very violent. Somebody gets decapitated in Silence, which is pretty full-on. Loved it. And yeah, basically they love to torture the Christians over in Japan thousands of years ago, which is very interesting. When you compare it to Wolf of Wall Street, you're like, holy wow. No wonder. I bet, Martin Scorsese, he is a very religious guy. He grew up Catholic. You can tell he after he made The Wolf of Wall Street, he just had so much Catholic guilt over it. He was like, holy shit, can't believe I made this. I'm going to hell. Better make Silence to get me back in God's good graces. So yeah, that's it is. I also went and saw a New Zealand film called The Breaker Uppers recently. Very good film. Really enjoyed it. Pretty good movie. Pretty hilarious. I loved the chemistry between the 2 leads. Can't remember their names. I also liked how Jermaine Clement shows up in a little cameo at the beginning as a Tinder date. Very hilarious. It's got great cinematography. The sound was great. Just kidding. I have no idea how the sound was. I heard it all. It was fine. Jokes were funny. The actors were funny. The direction was good. The directors were actually the 2 main stars, which is amazing. All right, another movie I saw recently was Black Klansman, which I loved. I loved it so much, but at the same time, I really, really hated it because there were 4 people behind me talking the entire time, and when I'm in those situations, I have no idea what to do because part of me just wants to turn around and tell them to shut up, but at the same time, I'm afraid this whole argument will cause. But yeah, it's a great movie. This guy named Ron Stallworth, he was a black man who worked for the Colorado Springs Police Department back in the 70s, and he managed to infiltrate the local Ku Klux Klan chapter and basically just fuck their shit up. And I loved it. I love Spike Lee. Do the Right Thing is definitely one of my favorite movies. Acting was great. Cinematography was great. The sound was great. It was great. Great. Double great. So I went and saw new Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible. The new Mission Impossible movie. Love the action. Love the stars, Tom Cruise. I love how there's just this whole rotating world of characters in Mission Impossible now, and it makes it feel really alive and in depth. Also, because I was recently in London, it was great seeing all these action sequences around the places that I'd just been to. I mean, to people who are from London, it's probably like every time they see London in a film, they're like, who cares? It's just another film. But you know what? You know what annoyed me the other day? Okay, when I was at work, I was overhearing these elderly ladies talking about the movies they'd seen recently. One of them was like, oh, I went and saw Mission Impossible, and I hated it because it was too over the top. It was too unrealistic with the action. And obviously, I couldn't say anything because it was work. But I was going, are you fucking serious, lady? That literally makes no sense as a criticism. You cannot say a Mission Impossible movie has too over the top, unrealistic action. That it goes against the entire nature of the movie. I don't know. It's like saying you don't like Schindler's List because it's too Jewish. This is probably not what you should be doing when you're traveling. But when I was traveling, I binged watched the new season of Queer Eye, which I absolutely love. I love that show so much because in this day and age where everything's so dark and depressing, it's such a lively, upbeat, and very inclusive show. And I really like it. I really like it. So if you ever want something to cheer you up, Queer Eye is the way to go. Another show I watched was called Patriot on Amazon Prime. And I really enjoyed that. And it's hard to sort of explain the whole concept and tone of the show in just a few words. But look, it's about this guy who works for the U.S. government. I think he's like an assassin or something. And he's a little bit burnt out. So he's taking some time off of work. And then they call him back and they ask him, they've got to infiltrate this company somewhere in the U.S. so he can go to Luxembourg and then stop a nuclear bomb from happening in Iran. But he's like really, it's really interesting, the tone, because he's like, it seems very, it's so interesting and unique. It's got this really good humorous side to it. It's really hard to explain, but it's definitely worth checking out. I think that's it for today. So if you managed to make it to the end, please let me know because I actually will give you a prize. I got some old fake teeth that I used for a short film. I might just give those out because I know what I'm going to do with them. Anyway, thank you and good night.